To prep for this question, I went back and listened to Stephen Fry's book on Greek mythology, Mythos. It's really well written, and I think it did come from a place of true love and appreciation for the mythology, even if Fry is a hard vocal anti-theist and atheist. At first, I thought my favorite myth was just the origin of the gods and the Titanomachy. Then, I thought it was the myth of Persephone and Hades. Those have always been my favorites since I was in elementary school and read the first Mythomania books. But as I went through, I realized my mind had changed even without me noticing it. When I was in my first attempt at college, I took a couple art history classes. The first one I hated, but the one piece that has stood out in my memory from that class is the Farnese Hercules, from the classical period about 200s AD. It depicts the figure of Hercules, and yes, I'm saying Hercules, not Heracles, because that's how I grew up, an old habit stiff heart, I guess, leaning and clearly exhausted. His arm is draped over his lion skin and club, and he's looking down. Now, this figure is immaculately sculpted. Every muscle is chiseled smooth, and the weight of the statue feels heavy. I love this piece because of a couple things. The figure of Hercules isn't depicted as this insanely muscular man or a bodybuilder. He's muscular, but the proportions are correct for him being a normal man with a strong body. As much as I like Disney's Hercules, it falls into the trap of depicting Herc as a weird-looking bodybuilder thing. And two, there's a story being told by the statue itself. If you recall from the most famous myth of Hercules, he went through his 12 labors in order to rid himself of the mental torture set upon him when he killed his whole family. This included killing various monsters, performing impossible tasks, and even convincing gods and titans to do things. Two of these labors are what I feel the statue could be connected to: the cleaning of the stables of Aegeus and the retrieval of the golden apples of the Hesperides. The first involved him literally shoving the shit of 1,000 cattle in one day. He was able to finish it by literally directing 2 rivers to wash away everything. And even then, he wasn't given the pay he was owed. The second labor was going to the hidden island of the Hesperides. When he was almost there, he came across Atlas, the titan tasked with holding up the literal sky on his shoulders. Hercules convinced Atlas, who was the father of the Hesperides, to retrieve the apples for him. In return, he would hold the sky up in Atlas's place until the Titan came back. But when Atlas did return, he tried to refuse to hold up the sky again, since that was his eternal punishment from Zeus for his role in Titanomachy, and who can blame him for not wanting to do that again? But Hercules tricked Atlas into taking the sky back, just for a moment so I can readjust my position to be slightly more comfortable. When Atlas took back the sky, Hercules raced away from the now angry Titan. These 2 tasks would undoubtedly exhaust a person. All of them would. The first would be mentally draining after all that hard labor, plus the anger and exhaustion from King Aegeus not holding up his end of the deal. The second would probably be the most exhausting of all the 12 labors, having to hold up this literal sky, which is barely possible for a Titan. I can imagine that once Hercules was done with each of these tasks, he went off and had a moment to himself to collect his strength, and probably stand in a similar position that the statue is in. A thing that sticks out to me from the class that I saw it in was the things that my professor said. She noted how Hercules was always shown as this huge man with the strength and fortitude that never wavers. His godlike strength is always seen to basically be replaced by a possible human-like exhaustion that comes from extraordinary tasks. She said to recognize how the statue puts the humanity back into the demigod figure. It reveals a sense of humanity that is rarely depicted, the need to rest and accept your need to rest. I grew up with my mom saying, "You were born to do hard things," whenever I faced mental or physical challenges. And I grew up with my dad, who is the strongest man I know. The statue actually reminds me a lot of my dad, both in build and what it teaches me, because that's the thing with mythology. It changes, it evolves, and ultimately it's there to teach lessons. And as a pagan, keeping that in mind is important, Paganism, Hellenism specifically here, doesn't have a Bible-like text to glean our mythologies from. The mythologies and stories we have now have been passed through nearly 2,000 years worth of filters and cultural shifts. Christianity has altered the myths and infused our society with mythic literalism. Because the myths and stories in the Bible are touted as literally the words from their God, and even considered 100% true literal history by many. This has made people assume all mythologies are to be treated the same way. So, today's society, in and outside the pagan communities, think that Zeus is a rapist and predator, that Hera is a bitchy, evil woman, and the gods are in incestuous marriages. That contributes to the discrimination and demonization of pagan religions. But the myths are ever-changing in allegories, metaphors, and fables to teach lessons and entertain. Circling back to the Farney statue. What I learned in this class acted as a type of oral myth. The myths began as an oral tradition, after all, and arguably still are to some extent. The class gave me a new perspective on the story of Hercules and the story of my own life. It taught me that even if I'm the strongest man ever, I still need to take time for myself to relax, recharge, and collect myself for the tasks ahead. There is no shame in needing a rest and a second to catch my breath.